So I'm gonna just start kind of talking about a little bit how my process works and like where I go for line art and painting and yeah. Um, so right now I'm just kind of drawing out the character that I want to do. It's a character that I've had for a while. Her name is Claire. Um, and just kind of trying to get a good line art look. I use this like sort of like fun scratchy brush from the Kyle set. I think it usually comes with Photoshop. Um, and my style's changed a lot kind of recently, so it's been more of this like sort of scratchy manga, a little bit messy style. I've really started liking doing this like blush thing on the face. Um, I always draw the hairline out whenever I do line art because it helps me figure out where my hair is gonna go. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty simple bust, so it's kind of like if you're still learning how to do busts, you could probably slow down this clip and like maybe watch how I do it a couple times. That's usually what I do when I don't know how to do something is I slow down speed paint. But yeah, and it takes a minute for me to kind of get the line art where I want it. My thought process going into this is kind of just trying to make line weights look okay-ish. Like I said, my sketches are pretty messy and I don't usually clean them up. At least not a lot. Not when I'm doing illustrations. Sometimes when I'm doing like comic stuff, I'll be a little bit more, sorry, a little more meticulous, but I just want everything to look natural, have the hair flowing the way I want. And I actually end up not being super like good with this line art. I don't delete it, but you'll see what happens here in probably just a second. And I was kind of playing around with the idea of like maybe putting some fun stuff in there, but yeah, here we go. Okay, so I decided to liquefy it a little bit and mess with the line art and get it to where I want. This is a good advantage of doing things digitally or inking things digitally. And see, now it's her face is a little bit more full. Her hair is not quite as like big on top that I have a really bad habit of doing. It's been that way with me since I was starting to do art like years and years ago. I've always just drawn really big hair and it bothers me sometimes. Here I'm just trying to figure out what the good color for her skin is. The first one was too pale, the second one was a little too dark for what I wanted. I wanted something kind of in the middle. And now I have to find a hot pink that's not so saturated it hurts everyone's eyes. She's naturally a redhead, so like that's why I wanted to make her so pale, but she also dyes her hair a lot, and usually it's pink. I'm just coloring in all the hair, doing what I have to. Putting down my flats, that's kind of an important part of my process now, at least for this style. It's kind of important to have a lot of styles. I feel like I have one that's definitely like a lot more painterly than others. And then I have, this one which is kind of like an in-between. If depending on how long I spend on it, I can make it more painterly if I want. But yeah, just putting down colors, cleaning up the line art. Her neck is actually really bothering me right now, but I know I go back and fix it at the very end, so it's fine. And you're always going to see your mistakes afterwards, and that's fine. That's how you learn. I'm just a perfectionist sometimes, to my detriment. I actually ended up going with a pure white for her eyes here, which I don't usually do. Usually I make it a yellow or a blue color, but neither of them looked very good. So getting into shading, I'm actually not going to get into shading until a little bit later, like actually shading. See, I just fucked it. I just hid the layer there because I was like, I'm gonna actually do all the blush stuff first. So I always do like an orangey reddish blush because it looks a lot more youthful, and this is actually way too much. I go back and erase some of it here in a second. But you want to put it like around the end of the eyes and across the nose. Usually I put some on the forehead because I think that just looks more natural, and on the neck and the shoulders, and the ears definitely. I've started coloring my eyebrows completely, and I think it just kind of makes this like fun look because I do these more scratchy eyebrows now rather than like solid bricks that I used to do. I used to do like a lot of my old style consisted of like really huge eyebrows. And now I'm kind of experimenting with this. So now I'm moving on to kind of shading her hair, and I'm working on finding a gradient that I like and then just kind of airbrushing out the top to make it like it gives the illusion of shadow without having to do a whole lot in terms of shadows. At least I think. I actually go a little bit. My style consists of going a little bit too crazy with things and then backing off, and I think that's how a lot of people work, and honestly should work, because it's like the opposite of like, you know, when you cut your hair you want to like do a little at a time to make sure you don't do too much. I always do way too much and then bring it back. I think that's the best way to do it, honestly. I can't really explain why. It's just how I feel about it. I actually have a little bit of a hard time trying to figure out like how I want to do this shading and like what brushes I'm using. I end up using a solid brush and then go back in and erasing with an airbrush because I think that just looks the best. You don't want to do an airbrush for all of your shadows because it can make everything end up looking kind of formless. And I actually end up changing the layer from, I think it was on a hard light layer to a soft light layer because I just liked the lighter shadows more. It really depends on your lighting situation and your character. This is a pretty like basic side lighting situation. It's not very dramatic, so I ended up not wanting any heavy shadows. And I actually mess up and wrote on the wrong layer there, so that's why you kind of see me mess with it for a second. But I believe this ends up being a hard light, and I just kind of, erase some of it out. Certain things, you just kind of have to play around with layers sometimes and see what works best. I'm softening up the hair there. Make it not look quite so jagged. Now I start doing the highlights. This is where stuff really starts to kind of come in and the drawing starts to come to life. You want to try to wait to do highlights because you want to try to make it look as good as possible without them. But I really think highlights do sort of make your drawing. And if you're feeling really unmotivated while you're doing your drawing, it can really help to actually go in and add highlights early, even though I know that just contradicted what I said. It's really about the flow, and it's like if you're losing your momentum, and you think it would look better if you just went ahead and did the highlights, then do it. Like, if you know what you're doing, then it won't be a problem, you know? And it's also okay to not know what you're doing, especially if you're just starting out. Like, that's fine. But it's okay to break the rules when you know what they are. You get what I mean? That's how, like, cartoon animation works. Like, all those people who make those cartoons know how to do life studies and, like, still lifes and stuff like that. But they can bend the rules enough and still make it believable in a cartoon. Anyway, rant over. I'm just going back and adding highlights with a Um, I believe it's a screen layer. I might be wrong about that. If it is, I'll put it in the annotation. And then I go back and erase a little bit to soften them up. Just, you don't want any too jagged spaces on your highlights of your hair because it's a soft form. It's a very soft, silky, organic form. And yeah, now I'm just kind of doing little fixes, honestly. Oh, here's my big trick for making your line art look good, even if it's sketchy. So you want to duplicate the line art layer. And if you colored your line art, or you want to merge it first, duplicate your line art layer, set the second one to Gaussian blur and turn it up until it looks, you know, kind of like this. I think mine was on like a 15 or 11. Like, you want it high, basically. Sometimes I'll even do it a third time. And then you just keep it, basically merge it down, and that's your new line art layer. Don't do this until the very, very end though, because otherwise it's going to, if you try to like color over it after the fact, it's gonna like kind of mess it up, and you're probably gonna have to Gaussian blur another line art layer, and it's just gonna be a whole thing. So I mean, yeah, try to wait until you're for sure done with the piece. I don't think my pieces look like in this style look as good without it. I've done it in a couple other pieces before. It just makes it look a lot better. It makes it look a lot softer, but without like blurring things out too much. But yeah, that's kind of how my process goes. That's how my like current main style is. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Obviously, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm trying to be a lot more consistent with making videos and I want to start making more tutorials and things. The best place to reach me is over at my Twitter at daggersarts.twitter.com. And I also have commissions open over there. I'm about to start working on my new webtoon comic. And yeah, I hope that you'll come back next time and enjoy what I have to offer. Thanks so much.